Hello, ScotsCare Podcast listeners. We're thrilled there's more of you than ever before, and we want to keep it that way. But did you know that most of us listen without subscribing or following the podcast? We would love it if, whichever platform you listen to, you follow or like or subscribe to the podcast. It makes a huge difference to us. Now, let's get on with this week's programme. Hello, I'm Marcus Railton, and welcome to Series 3 of the ScotsCare Podcast. ScotsCare is the only charity dedicated to helping disadvantaged Scots across London, breaking the cycle of poverty through services such as financial support, homelessness, mental health therapy, family support, advocacy, sheltered housing, social events and befriending, amongst others. In the new series, I'll be chatting with guests from all backgrounds, all with one thing in common: Scottish roots. Listen to the ScotsCare Podcast to hear their story. My guest today is historian, writer and broadcaster Alistair Heather, though many of you will know him as Historic Ali. Alistair has a real talent for making history feel fresh, relevant and very much alive. And it's not just in lectures or on TV. He's taken that energy online, where he's built a huge following on Instagram and Facebook. Thousands of people tune in every week for his smart, funny and often dark and surprising take on the past. So sit back and enjoy this conversation with Alistair, a historian who's proving that history really can go viral. On the day we recorded this chat, we jumped on the Zoom very early because he had said to me that he had to get a train to Edinburgh, so I started off asking him if he was an early riser. We chatted about his love for Scotland, but for both of us, at least for a while, feeling that we had to leave our country before we could come back to it and really fall in love all over again. We had a blather about education and how, I think, Ali is redefining how our kids consume worthwhile, educative content, showing that not everything on YouTube and Instagram is just nonsense. And we chatted about the Scots language, something that Ali really champions. And I'm not talking about Gaelic, I'm talking about Scots as a standalone language. Ali explained to me the roots of the Scots language and how these days it's actually stronger than it's been in a long while. So here we go, on the ScotsCare Podcast with Alistair Heather.
ScotsCare, the charity helping to break the cycle of poverty some Scots find in London.
Thank you for doing this, Ali. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thanks very much for having us on. I've really enjoyed reading about ScotsCare. In a previous historical project, I was looking at the St Andrew's Society operating out of the Netherlands and operating out of Belfast. So I've got a real interest in these sort of philanthropic groups of Scots trying to help each other out when they're on tough times.
It's an interesting charity, over 400 years old, and it's a long time to be going and still going strong. And they're a great team to work with. But here we are recording first thing in the morning. Are you a morning person?
Oh, absolutely a morning person. To the extent that it winds up most of my pals, because I bounce out of bed. I'm always keen to do things first thing, but also on nights out, I basically have the kind of carriage turning into a pumpkin at midnight. So no matter how good the night is, no matter how much fun we're having, no matter how big the plans, come about 5 to midnight, I just disappear. Just run off into darkness and head home.
I totally understand, because you're a bit younger than me, but I've got 3 kids. And if I go out at night with, some of the dads or some friends, I get to about 10 o'clock and think, I'm not enjoying this enough to have the hangover the next day when, my 7-year-old daughter is going to be up at 6:30 in the morning, jumping on my pillow, wanting breakfast. So there's no night out is worth the pain in the morning anymore.
No, I think that's absolutely bang on.
Can we start off? Because I wanted to talk to you about social media, because this is where we kind of discovered you and your videos. It was a colleague of mine, Rory, that I work with, and he says, "Oh, you got to see this guy. He keeps on popping up in my Facebook feed. He's absolutely brilliant." And he sent me a link to you, and you have got a great social following, well over 100,000 on Instagram, well over 50,000 on Facebook. You're popular on X as well. Is this something that's happened organically for you? Do you find that, because when I look at a lot of Instagram, a lot of it's crap, let's be honest. And then I come across something like you, and you're doing something that is informative and educative and interesting. Did your feeds grow organically, I think is what I'm trying to ask you. Did you find that there's a hunger out there for the content that you're providing?
Yeah, very much so. So, like you mentioned, X there, Twitter as used to be, and I used to have that account. I founded it as at Historic Alley or Historic underscore Alley way back in like 2012 when I was working as a steward at Historic Scotland sites. And my whole idea was I was just going to be tweeting interesting little historical vignettes and pictures and stories. And then the independence referendum came along and Twitter got extremely political and I got totally into that as well. And Twitter became like a political discourse space. And so when Twitter finally started dying a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, we need to try and use social media. Which ones are out there? I thought I'm going to go and start an Instagram. I'm going to actually make it history. Like I'm going to like sidestep the worst of the kind of back and forth tit for tat. And I'm just going to focus on telling interesting stories that I really enjoy. Because I think, first of all, it's fun for me. Second of all, I'm in these places anyway on my days off and on my weekends and things. Third of all, I really think there is a good aspect for folk learning about their own heritage, learning about the place they live, maybe the place they've newly moved to. There is something very grounding about that. And so I thought that it's fun for me and also might be helpful for folk. So yeah, I've just been committed to doing the history videos and it's absolutely, of course, it's grown way more than expected. Like my brother said, oh, these videos are good. You might get 10,000 followers. And now it is, as you say, like it's 100 odd thousand. I don't quite know what they're all doing here because I'm mostly just talking about this stone was actually put here 5,000 years ago. Well, that's what folk are getting off at.
One of the things I like about your videos is that a lot of history is dark, and you don't shy away from that. I think I quite like that. You did this thing about medieval pregnancy termination, and there's some other stuff you would never be taught in school. And I find myself forwarding your videos on to my friends saying, this is just genuinely interesting. And do you ever have to kind of editorialize yourself and say, I can do that, but that pushes it too far? Because I don't mean this in an odd way, but I kind of prefer your darker side of history because it's almost more interesting.
That's interesting. So I think with Instagram, from a historical perspective, you need to be careful because you could just endlessly tell stories that perform well on Instagram, and that would dictate the stories you tell. But I want to try and stay quite pure to the history. Like these are I want to like properly researched, properly interesting bits of historical knowledge. But in order to make them worth telling today, they've got to have a modern resonance. So did one recently about in the 1980s Dundee twinning with Palestine. And yes. Dundee City Council officially recognising the state of Palestine, which is quite a bold thing for a local council to do. I did one about, as you say, pregnancy termination in medieval Scotland. Did one about, I've done a few that they are darker, and I think that's more a reflection of the times we're in. Like, these are slightly dark times, so the stories that I feel compelled to tell have a bit of darkness through them.
Yeah, and I think we like a bit of macabre as well, because my kids love the horrible history stuff.
Yeah, of course.
We've been to see that live. That you see it on stage and they lap it up. And there was one one Instagram post that really flew for you. I looked at it yesterday when I was doing some research, and there was 3.7 million views on it. And that was, can you tell us about that? That was about Nelson Mandela.
Yeah, so this was one. I was walking through the Toon Centre with a few of my pals in Glasgow, and which is how these videos often just happen. And I thought, I'll do a quick story about Nelson Mandela Place, because it's bang in the middle of Glasgow. It's quite a beautifully constructed, I think it's like a Georgian, Edwardian sort of city square with a church in the middle. And I happened to already know, and it's quite well known amongst my friend group anyway, that Nelson Mandela Place was named that because when Nelson Mandela was still in prison in terrorist charges in apartheid South Africa, and the South African consulate was on that street. So Glasgow City Council, as a statement of opposition to apartheid, changed the name of that street to Nelson Mandela Place, so that any time the South African consulate had to get mail or give their address, it would arrive to Nelson Mandela Place, a man that they claimed was a terrorist. But Glasgow Council were clearly stating that that is the side that we are on. And I got so many great messages from not old people, but slightly older Glaswegians who were there the whole way through, saying they ran regular protests every week outside the South African consulate. Not violent or anything, but just consistently stating apartheid is not right. And I find those all the little stories I got after that were great. And also one I really liked was people in Iran were saying that the British embassy, they renamed the street outside the British embassy to Bobby Sands Road.
Oh my Lord, really?
Yeah, so, and more recently, I think Norway and Latvia and things have changed the names of where the Russian embassy is to Slava Ukraina Road, like in support of Ukraine. So it's become this kind of tit for tat thing, which I think is actually like quietly radical. And it's very much the kind of, people feel so hopeless often about the big events in the world and think, oh, there's nothing I can do about that. But there are these little radical steps that you can take. And I think it's quite empowering to learn about them in the past. But yeah, that really took off.
It did, didn't it? I want you come across as a very, this is a kind of old word because it becomes so politicized. You sound very nationalistic, and I'm very nationalistic in a way that I'm proud of Scotland. I'm proud of being Scottish. So where did you grow up? The reason I asked that is because I grew up in this suburb outside of Glasgow, and it was very poor, and it kind of shaped my view of Scotland probably for the first half of my life. In that alley, I couldn't wait to leave. So I didn't have a very positive view of where I grew up. But you obviously you stayed and you've enjoyed it, and you're very proud. And even though I say that, I'm still kind of keen. I live outside London now, and I would love to move back. I've spent the first half of my life trying to get out of Scotland, and probably the last 15 years trying to get back into Scotland. But you've always had a real love for the country. Was this the way you were brought up, and where were you brought up?
That's an interesting question, because I would say that's not quite my own experience. Like, I grew up in a wee village called Newbiggin in Angus, and that was class. So there was never any question. Britishness wasn't a thing in the family. We were Scottish, but my dad's actually from New Zealand, and his mum is still alive. She's Faith Fife. She's 101 years old, and I'm way out to visit her. She lives in New Zealand. She's lived there for most of her life. So, like, we grew up Scottish with a New Zealand connection, which is absolutely fine for me. But I had a similar experience to you, that when I left high school and was looking for work, Dundee had nothing to offer. So I'm from Angus, but Dundee's the big city. Really no money, really no jobs. Like, I was working, my first job was just cleaning toilets at the golf. Another job was just working at a call centre in Dundee. Like, the opportunities were so few. And I've seen folk really fall into, like, sort of the booze, the drugs, the dole. And I was on the dole for a while, but I really needed to get out of there. And when I left, like yourself, I thought, I'm never coming back. This place has let me down. So I moved to New Zealand and lived there for a few years, just travelling around working as a labourer. And even when I was very young, my granny always said, son, we love you, but there's nothing for you here. You'll have to go to Canada. And I'm like, Granny, I'm 6 years old. Like, get off me. I'm not going to Canada. So the idea of Scots needing to get out to get ahead or just to survive isn't uncommon. But after a number of years away, I lived in New Zealand, lived in the Republic of Georgia for a year, lived in France. I knew I had to come home. I was really missing the place. And I thought, if I'm coming home, I'm going to fall in love with it and find something about it I can really love. And when I was living away in New Zealand, they were going through this big cultural change where they were moving away from their European roots and moving more towards their Polynesian. So things like the Maori language, the decolonising New Zealand's history, decolonising their museums was really ongoing. And I came back to Scotland and I found the Scots language was not being treated with anything like the respect it deserved. I seen that the Gaelic wasn't being treated with anything like the status it deserved. And Scottish folk didn't have the cultural confidence that we should have based on the strength of our culture. So I thought, if I'm going to be here and it wasn't good enough for me as a young person, I'm going to focus my positive energies on helping folk appreciate the wonder, the beauty, the cultural richness of who they are and where they are in the hope that that would kind of just like be part of a general improving vibe around Scotland. And I think the referendum was really good for democratic re-engagement, which is an empowering thing. I think that like much more kind of devolved television and radio means we are telling our own stories a lot more. There's a kind of vibrant theatre scene, there's vibrant poetry scene. Scots are now more confident in who they are and where they are. And also economically, things just aren't as bad as when me and you were young.
Bring me sunshine.
Are we smiling? The ScotsCare Choir brings together clients, volunteers and staff for weekly sing-alongs and social connection. Whether you're a seasoned singer or just love a good tune, all are welcome. Get in touch to join in.
The question I'm going to ask you now is, because my wife she's English, but she grew up on Anglesey in North Wales, which is a beautiful island. And they kind of have this kind of love-hate relationship with tourism because there's such a massive influx to the island that it takes away jobs from the locals to a certain extent, and people buy second homes there, so locals get priced out of the home market. And have you seen this in and around Dundee? Because there has been so much improvement. Has that been more positive?
So I would say that tourism is not a problem for Dundee. Like we are not overrun. Like in Scotland, these stats are old, so they're just going from the top of my head, and it's a few years ago. But there was £5 billion spent by tourists in Scotland. 4 billion was in Edinburgh, and much of the rest was in Skye. So we have these super heated locations. Like Skye really struggles with tourism. Edinburgh, even though it's a big city, is struggling with the sheer weight of tourism. Everywhere else in Scotland is basically fine. So what Dundee needed, because when I was there, it was like a single, or it had one or two industries, you know. It had the jute until the mid-90s, the last jute place closed. It had all the manufacturing of like watches and of cash machines, and my granddad worked at the battery factory making batteries. But it was mostly around manufacturing, and all of that died in the 90s. And so the city became largely unemployed, like huge unemployment. So I think what you need now is a just more diverse economy. It's quite a small economy in Dundee, but you have that diversity of, there's video games developers here. Then you have a bit of tourism. Then you have a bit of the old universities bringing that kind of thing in, like research grants and that kind of thing. And what we need now is just a diverse economy. And bringing in a bit of tourism is ideal because, first of all, it changes perceptions about Dundee. Like most Dundee visitors are UK based. And your listeners, if they've heard of Dundee, might have heard it called Scumdee, which was its nickname for a long time.
I've not heard of that one.
Yeah. And we're trying to rebrand it as Fundy. And it is like, it's so different to what they expect. So changing those perceptions is good. Having folk come to Dundee and having a nice time helps Dundonians reimagine their own space. Like, hey, folk are coming here for their holidays. It can't be as bad as we think it is. And also, it is just that ticking over of income. The V&A in Dundee is excellent. The McManus galleries and museums are excellent. The Discovery ship's a really good attraction. And by bringing in tourism, that helps keep these places afloat so Dundonians can enjoy them as well. So I think at the minute, we could do with a little bit more tourism in Dundee, but it's never gonna be like you have in Anglesey, because it's a city. We have hotels, we have places for the tourists to go. Anglesey is stunning, you're absolutely right. But Wales really struggles in a way that Scotland doesn't quite. Because of the age-old story, Wales is just slightly too near England. So they can just sweep over the border with their big London salaries and buy up half the houses.
I think there's a place there in Anglesey called Rossniger, which is beautiful. It's a little kind of, it's not even a town, it's a hamlet, almost like a little surf hamlet. And I think 80% of the houses there are now second homes for people from Surrey and London. And you think, well, that kind of unfortunately makes that economy unsustainable because most of the year these houses lie empty. So it's
unreal.
It's not a good thing.
Dundee does have, I will bring this up, because we've got the V&A now, and there is talk of us getting, Cornwall's Eden project.
Yes.
They are interested in taking over a big old gasworks in the city centre and turning it into what looks like a beautiful kind of urban botanic space. Wow. Now, that's a long way off, but in the next 5 years, 10 years, that's very realistic. A magazine called Landlord Focus had a big spread on the very working class area around there saying landlords should buy here now and jack up the rent because all the employees, all the construction workers and things are going to be needing this. And so I went and spoke to, the local newspaper, I went and spoke to folk in that community and asked them about how precarious their living situation was. And almost everyone there, working class folk, were saying, I currently pay £400 a month for my flat. If it was 100 quid more than that, I'd have to leave, and I don't know where I'd go. And a lot of people I'm speaking to are already, living on their ex's couch or already in like Hillcrest social housing. And it's like, if that gets targeted by investment landlords who look to extract from the community, we're going to be in real bother. So Dundee tourism, extremely welcome. Speculative landlordism, I'd like to see that less welcome.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? And I understand why tourism and more people coming to the area is great, but it's a bit of a seesaw, isn't it? You just tip the balance.
This is a great chat, Marcus. We're really getting down to business early doors here. I thought we were coming here to chat about history, but no, here we go.
It's a wide-ranging conversation. Let's talk about education in schools now, because I think what I like about many things that I like about you and your content is that it appeals to me, and it also appeals to my children, because it's a modern way of teaching. And sometimes I've got kids at either end of the age spectrum. My 16-year-old has just finished his GCSEs down here, and you couldn't get him out of bed without napalm in the morning. And
Sure.
I've got a 7-year-old daughter she's female, she's a girl, she's studious, and then I've got this kind of Rafe in the middle who's a wild dog. He's 12. But he loves consuming on his phone and his tablet, and we have to watch that. But a lot of the stuff he likes is your content. But
thank you, Rafe. Good on you.
So I think that's great for him. And it was like, what was the video he was watching the other day? It was about 3 things you need to know about the Jacobites.
Oh yeah,
which is fantastic, because there I immediately go, what are you doing? What are you doing, Rafe? Why are you on your phone? And he goes, I'm watching Historic Alley, 3 things, rather than 12 reasons not to, break your neck on a trampoline. So it's really heartening to see this kind of content, your kind of content, being consumed by a younger generation.
I do like that. And I like, because Rafe, obviously, through you, will have that big Scottish connection, but if he's grown up south of the border, then it is that way of him attaching a little bit to his heritage. Like, there was research done at Glasgow Uni recently about how good it is for your mental health and your sense of well-being to feel a sense of your heritage and feel a sense of being grounded and belonging to something. So for somebody like yourself in a mixed marriage, I think we can call it. No, I'm joking. In terms of a young person like that, having that sense of identity is really good for his well-being. Like, I was in a cafe in Dundee, and I had like one of the compliments I've enjoyed most, just a relatively young lassie, maybe sort of 22, 23, Scottish accent, but said she was born and raised for the first part of her life in Poland to a Polish family, then moved to Dundee. And it's by watching my videos, as well, I'm sure as loads of other stuff, she's started to feel a much greater connection and love for the place that she lives, and a much greater appreciation of Dundee and its wider environment and the countryside around here. And that feels good to me. Like, that feels really good. Like, when I'm on a bus and like a really working class guy who's maybe out of work or whatever says that he loves the videos, and they teach him things about his city he didn't know, I'm like, oh, that's class. Like, that's a great impact. That's what you want. That's the good stuff.
That's heartening. I like that. And it's really interesting what you say about creating a sense of community and creating a sense of belonging. I was having this conversation with my friend Debbie, and she's an expat like me. And, she's from Aberdeen, actually. She spent, 25 years of her life in Aberdeen, and then, the next 20 years of her life down here, just outside London. And she said to me recently, she said, oh, when I go home, I don't feel like I belong there anymore. And when I'm here, as in London, I don't feel like I belong here. And so, which is quite sad then, because you end up in this kind of no man's land of not belonging. So you can just, and I think that's what keeps you mentally healthy, if you have a strong community around you. I suppose that's why people form them.
Yeah, that's exactly why I couldn't stay living abroad for so long. Like, left at 17, but came back and resettled in Scotland when I think I was about 22, because I just didn't like being an outsider to that extent. Like, I was never going to become, like, living in the Republic of Georgia for a year was amazing, but I was never going to master the language to the extent I could just assimilate. New Zealand, everyone's so cool, but the first question they always ask is like, "Oh, you Scottish, on holiday? How long are you here for?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Actually, I've been living here for years, man." So it is that sense of like, I love New Zealand, but it's not my place. And so if Dundee and Angus is my place, I need to find something that can help me flourish and help me be positive and enjoy my life. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Are you concerned about your child or teenager's well-being? ScotsCare, in partnership with the Westminster Centre for Young People, is offering 6 free one-to-one therapy sessions with parents via Zoom. A safe, non-judgmental space to explore your child's behaviour and take positive steps towards change. You'll gain insight, support and guidance and decide if further treatment is right for your child. To find out more, visit ScotsCare.com.
Can we talk about the Scots language? I'm not talking about Gaelic, because you're a champion of the Scots language, and I think that it's a bit of a misconception that the Scots language is slang English.
I know Abdi kens what we're on about when we're having a blether about Scots, and especially with doing it in Scots. But what I'm fae, Abdi, especially the Alderians, would speak to us bairns in Scots, which is an odd lead that comes fae the Anglic, like ken the Anglo-Saxons. Right. So the Angles and the Saxons were twa tribes that come over fae Germany area, and the Saxons settled down south, and their Germanic dialect came on to become modern English, whereas the Angles settled in Northumbria and around Edinburgh, and their dialect went on to be Scots. So like Latvian and Lithuanian are very similar but separate, or like the Nordic languages, or Scandinavian languages, I should say, Scots and English came fae a similar route and then grew apart for a long time. And it was actually during the Wars of Scottish Independence that Scotland and England really got driven apart, and Scots became the national language. And it's a Germanic language related to English, but distinct and separate, and it's spoken by over 1.5 million people. And in some parts of Scotland, so Dundee, about 40% of the population, according to the census, are Scots speakers. And you're like, say, Buckie and Murray, you're talking about 60-70%. Shetland, 60-70%. And it's in very distinct, separate dialects. And there's a national literature, and there is mere effort to promote it and celebrate it. Because again, it's another thing that keeps folk doing. Scots speakers tend to be working class or rural, and another way to keep them doing, or keep us doing, is to say your language is just bad English. It's no good enough, and therefore you're no good enough. And the language your grandparents spoke to you in isn't as good as English. And by valorising Scots and by saying, here, we have this whole literature, we have this whole history, it is this vibrant, beautiful thing. By celebrating it, we make it a positive to be bilingual, to speak both Scots and English. And yeah, I work very closely with pals that are Gaelic speakers as well, because Gaelic's a different language, it's in a different situation, it's in a different part of the country, but the attitudes towards Scots are very similar to attitudes towards Gaelic. And I think, Scots is doing way better now, and it's only going to get, you're slowly seeing it seep more into mainstream broadcasting, but the main thing is folk are writing it and speaking it tons on social media and in the streets, and it has a place to live, which is good.
Going back to I know we were talking about Wales earlier. If you grow up or if you go to school certainly in North Wales, it's part of your educational curriculum that you have to speak Welsh, and you will be taught Welsh in school. Is there legislation? Do you know if there's legislation to expand the Scots language?
So they've just passed the Scottish Languages Bill in Holyrood, which gives it equal status to English, but really, as far as I can see, the efforts for Scots are happening at a grassroots level. So there's loads of teachers who are just using Scots in the classroom and teaching Scots in the classroom. Because the education systems here are very devolved to the teacher, they decide what they teach. And it's no a centralised curriculum like you get in England. So it's no like the Scottish government could say, right, you're all teaching Scots now, it's down to the teachers. And a lot of teachers are now doing that. But we don't have that kind of centralised thing that you get elsewhere. So it's about creating great resources, getting into schools, encouraging teachers, that's what's happening now.
You made a program last year. Was it last year called Beyond? No, it was this year. It was at the beginning. God, it's been a long year. It was the beginning of this year, January, wasn't it? Beyond Burns, which was exploring Scots poetry. And that I saw Michael Pedersen at the St Andrews Book Festival last year, and he was absolutely fantastic. Is Scots poetry, is that in a healthy place?
Scots poetry is actually flying the new because folk feel that it's theirs. I know poetry to international audiences can seem a bit odd, but it is like so bouncing in Scotland. So like you'll get like Michael Pedersen organises big like poetry nights where you get 200 folk in a nightclub, and you get like 6 or 7 youthful, talented, edgy poets discussing their worldview and sharing their art to like loads of folk who are out having pints, having a good time. Poetry is a part of that scene, and Aberdeen's got a night Speaking Weird, which is all about Scots verse on stage. Dundee has a monthly meetup called Blether, where you get an audience of 40 and 50 every month in a semi-abandoned 1980s shopping centre. And the poets themselves come from all sorts. Like you get scaffolders, you get dramaturgs, you get all sorts of folk expressing themselves through Scots poetry. So folk are finding their voice and finding their creativity through that. Because folk already speak it, they're more empowered. And because I think the Burns legacy, like Rabbie Burns, is so big and so celebrated that Scots always has that legitimacy.
I like the fact that you've kind of explored poetry moving forward, because I think what you are is you're a kind of poster boy for modern history. And I mean history in a modern sense. I think if I had to kind of throw rocks at Scotland a wee bit, what always frustrated me and I wanted to change was that I felt as if we're a wee bit too Scotty Dog and tartan shortbread tin. And I think I learned Burns in school and I wanted it to be more modern. And I think what you and a lot of poets like Len Penny or Pedersen are doing are kind of showing a modern, vibrant Scotland.
I'm not sure when it really started to change, but for the 1970s, you had cultural actors. That's when you had the folk revival, when folk went back to Scottish folk music and started really trying to do something new and creative with it. For there, you started getting really good Scottish writers emerging for that cultural melting pot. You got the campaign for an independent parliament down at Holyrood, and we won that devolution vote. And my whole life has just been this sense of building momentum around what it is to be a modern Scottish nation. And that is, culture is the thing. Like politics follows culture. So all this stuff about referenda and all this stuff about politics and nation, it all comes after the culture. And there's been a cultural movement that's been building for decades now. And of course, all that tartan shortbread stuff needs washed away. Like I love wearing a kilt. I take pride in it. And I do chomp on shortbread when the opportunity arises. But it can't be the core of your identity.
There's some brilliant writers about. I was lucky enough to chat to Colin McIntyre last year at the St Andrews Book Festival, and he wrote a book called When the Needle Drops, and he's also the musician behind the Mull Historical Society.
Oh yeah,
and his murder mystery, which starts off Ali, it starts off phenomenally. Silence of the Lambs violent. It's brilliant, but it's all set on Mull, and I thought, oh God, can I suspend my disbelief enough for this? But it was great. It was a superb book. I also read, do you know Malachi Tallock? I read his book recently. Oh, I'll send you a link to him. He's another islander.
Lovely. It's about reimagining the spaces that you live in, you inhabit, as a place where all these things can happen. And it's about bringing the place back to life, because in the popular imagination, I won't go into it too much, but in the popular imagination, Scotland was always represented as a historical dead end. Historical Scottish documentaries about our history, or books about our history, all ended with the Jacobite failure at Culloden. And Scotland was dead, Britain was the new thing, and Scotland existed as a part of that. And Scotland was very often represented as an old man in adverts, like an old guy in a kilt offering you a dram, offering you a biscuit.
Yes.
And a lot of that was the idea of what Scotland as a nation represented, which was old, used to be a warrior, but is now safe and redundant. And that whole thing is just gone. Like all that, like the Jacobites being the core part of our identity and things like that, that's all away. And we are building new things, and writing books about murders in Mull is a part of the same cultural movement. And it's not being directed for anywhere. This is just naturally arising.
What have you got coming up? If you had a dream project to kind of make Scotland great again, what would it be?
Honestly,
that's terrible. It's as if it's not great now. I'm sorry.
Loads of it isn't great. Like the things that I'd most like, the changes I'd like to see in Scotland is just a greater sense of empowerment, of a greater sense of democratic accountability, a greater sense of we can change things for the better in our own lives. That's what I think is growing and is building. And so to further that, I'd like to become the communist mayor of an independent Dundee. Now, I don't know what that is, and I don't know what that looks like, but it sounds fun. I think I'd declare war on Fife. And maybe
annexing Dundee.
I think about annexing Dundee and then turning Fife into kind of like maybe that's the fields that then fuel the great industrial reawakening of communist Dundee. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's my bit.
Have to issue black and orange passports. Oh, that was Dundee United.
Yeah, I think Dundee United is very much my team. So I think Dundee FC would be on a sticky wicket when I come to my tyrannical reign. Well, to be honest, Marcus, I'm really happy with what I'm doing. I don't have any great big plans. I've got tours that I operate through the summer. I've been commissioned to write a book, so we spend the winter writing a book.
Super.
And then I'm doing what I want to be doing. I feel like I am where I should be.
Oh. Right, final question, Ali, then, and I'll let you get off because I know you're getting on a train to Edinburgh shortly.
I am.
And this is probably an impossible question, but if I said, Ali, I'm coming to Scotland, I just want you to recommend one place. What would it be? And it doesn't even have to be a big place. It could be an undiscovered secret, you know.
Well, it's not undiscovered at all, but I don't know anyone that's not done the Hermitage Walk at Dunkeld and not come away loving it. So this is just a woodland walk near Dunkeld, which is a beautiful village at the kind of southern tip of the Highlands, only an hour from Edinburgh. And it is just gorgeous, thick woodland, a rushing river, and then an ancient old bridge across the river, and Ossian's Hall, which is a kind of like romantic folly built in the 1800s. And there's just so much there that is beautiful and soothing. The path is very accessible. There's a wee guy there with a coffee hut in the car park. If you only could come to one place, there's no one that wouldn't enjoy that. And also, everyone can access it. It's free. The path is smooth, so you can wheel along it. You can take a pram. It's easy walk. That is, I would say, it's a good place to go.
Alistair, thank you for today. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciated it.
Thank you, Marcus.
Well, best of luck for the future, and I hope you don't miss your train.
Thank you very much.
Love what ScotsCare does? Help us spread the word. Share this podcast, tell a friend, or give us a shout out on social media. Like and share our posts. The more people that know us, the more Scots we can support.
Thanks for listening. And remember, if you don't need a service of ScotsCare, you might be interested in supporting the charity by donating or volunteering your time. It's easy to sign up. To do so, please visit scotscare.com. And next time on the podcast, rounding up part 1 of Series 3, I'll be joined by entertainment reporter Ross King. You'll know Ross from his work on ITV's Lorraine, where he brings Hollywood right into our living rooms. With decades in broadcasting and a front row seat to the biggest names in film and music, Ross has some brilliant stories to share. And he can also be seen in this latest season of Strictly Come Dancing. It's going to be lively, fun, and full of behind-the-scenes insight. Don't miss it. But until then, bye-bye.